Now sometimes when I'm sitting down on the bench, I'm just looking for inspiration, and I'll grab one of my favorite books, a pattern encyclopedia like Raymond Scott Stetzer's Flies the Best 1000, just find something cool to tie and give it a shot. That's what I did today. Hello everybody, welcome to Savage Flies. I'm Matt, thanks for stopping by. So the pattern I found in here was created by Don Roberts. Now I couldn't find a lot of information out there on Don. I did see one conservation article. It looked like he had written from West Coast Fly Fishing magazine. So I gather he's a West Coast fly fisherman and tyer, probably a contemporary because the article wasn't all that long ago. Now the pattern I'm talking about is called the Public Enemy #1. Aside from it just having a pretty cool sounding name, it caught my eye because it was a quill body dry fly. Just a fairly standard looking midge pattern. So I'm thinking we haven't done a quill body dry fly in a good while on the channel, so I thought it would be a good one to do today. Now there are no advanced techniques to this pattern. Maybe you haven't wrapped a lot of quill bodies for dry fly, but it's not that challenging. But overall, it's a really cool looking pattern, not that hard to tie. I think it's going to be a fish catcher, and I think you're going to like it. So there you go, Don Roberts, Public Enemy #1. Pretty nifty little midge pattern. Now it's not as tiny as a lot of midges you'll see. Recipe calls for size 12 to 16, so I'm going to tie it on the bigger end. Just makes it a little bit easier to make a video. This is a size 12 standard length dry fly hook. Now what thread am I going to be using? That's right, I'm stepping it down. I'm going to use a 12/0 instead of my standard 70 denier in black, and I'll lay a base down to the start of the bend. Now the tail on this guy is just a very small clump of Grizzly hackle fibers. I'm talking maybe 10 or so, and not long. Just maybe a hook gap, maybe not even a hook gap. So let's go ahead and catch this in with a couple wraps, see what we've got. Yep, that's about what I want, but I want to catch it in just a little farther back. Make my body a little bit longer. Okay, that's going to work right there. Now I could put a wrap up under them, keep them from sliding around, but I'm not going to worry about it. I want to do some loose wraps right here. This is just going to keep me from having a lump back there, but also thicken up my body just a little bit. Okay, so bury all these in. Now leave my thread right here. Now this is a pretty good tip, I think. When you're tying a lot of dry flies and you've got a lot of hackle feathers left, if you've got 3 or 4 inches, don't throw them out. Just strip them. Just strip them, and then you've got a nice quill. And certainly if you're doing it with a Grizzly makes these nice quill bodies. So I've got a feather right here, and I'll do this if I'm tying a bunch of dry flies and I'm going to have a lot left over. I might just strip them and then put these feathers in a Ziploc bag, or not feathers, but quill bodies. Not quill bodies, quills. 4 quill bodies. There we go, that's what I'm trying to say. So I'll catch it in with the thin side, and again, I'm just doing this to wrap it back to where my first wraps are going to be a little bit thicker of the quill, but it's thickening up this body a little right here. If you try to wrap it on a really narrow hook, you might be putting the wraps a little bit too tight, and you might end up breaking this thing. It's not terribly brittle, but it's not the most pliable thing to work with. And you'll notice that at the start, you're wrapping some pretty thin ribs. This is a really thin quill back here, but before we get up to the front, it'll start getting a little bit thicker, and that'll give you a pretty cool striped variegated look. So just wrap these all the way up to the front, right next to each other, and then catch it off. Okay, I think that's a long enough of a body. And this, fairly good size number 12 hook, it took me about 4 inches of quill to wrap that body. Maybe not quite 4 inches, but it took a good piece. And I didn't take it all the way up front because we got a couple other components right here. And before we do that, the one, I don't know if I mentioned it, the one you saw in the vise at the beginning, I had UV resin on it. So you can certainly put a drop of UV resin on it and harden it up right here. You might lose a little bit of that segmentation, but it will certainly make the fly more durable. Now, as far as will it make it float better? I don't really know. Maybe. I wouldn't think so. I would think it might make it just a little bit more dense. So the next component we're going to be putting on is black ostrich herl. And if you don't have black ostrich herl, use peacock. I think that would be fine. I would not skip this step because you kind of need it to help prop your wings up and the deer hair throat we're going to be putting on in just a second. So it's not a big thorax. It's really just maybe 3 wraps right here. Maybe 4 if you can get them. If I started a little farther back, I could have gotten 4. But I think that's going to be fine right there, and that will prop our wings up just fine, if we're lucky, I guess. Okay, so there we go. We got a little bit of a thorax right there. A couple of extra wraps to lock it in. Now for the wings, just some of Grizzly hackle tips. Little guys right here, not too long. And I'm not even going to worry about the orientation. I'm going to catch them in, and then I can orient them after I've got a couple of wraps on. Just make it a little bit easier. So that's 3 wraps, I guess. I want them sticking up. I don't necessarily want them right next to each other. I'd like them to be separated just a little bit. Let's see if we can do that right here before we really lock them in. And you do want to be a little bit careful with them because they're kind of brittle. Maybe not brittle, but just not real strong. Okay, I think we're fine right there. A couple of securing wraps. Now let's take care of these butt ends right here. Just snip these as close as you can. Okay, those wings are fine. And they got a little bit back together on me. All right, we can live with that. Now, for the legs, which is a deer hair throat, not many at all. I'm talking 10 or 12 fibers or hairs. Put it in your stacker if you want to, or don't worry about it and just try to get the tips even with your fingers. And this is about all we're going to do. So I'm going to just catch this in right here, maybe to the point of the hook, maybe just a little bit shy of it. So I'll do a pinch wrap right there, not real tight yet. Second wrap, it's a little tighter. And those might be a little bit longer than I want. Can I shorten them without really messing it up? Maybe. Okay, that's fine. I don't want to get too carried away and then yank them out. So I've got 3 wraps right there, holding those in. Now before I turn it back right side up, I'm just going to go ahead and snip these off right here. Now we'll take a look at it before we really lock our head in. Are we happy enough with these wings? Yeah, maybe they could be a little bit more upright, but I'm certainly not going to put some wraps behind them now because I would just mess it all up. So let's try to clean this head up. Just take some wraps right back there to the eye and then build you a little dry fly head, not too big. I do want to put a drop of head cement on it, so I'm going to use a few wraps. Now I think we're ready to wet finish. And look at that. Wouldn't you know it, I just poked one of those deer hairs forward. So I caused a little bit extra cleanup. Can I pluck that one out? Oh yeah, I think so. All right, there you go. So public enemy number 1, just a pretty basic little midge pattern. Not really hard to tie. Looks kind of cool, and I think this is going to be an effective pattern wherever you got midge hatch going on. So that's it, everybody. I appreciate you watching. Y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.